Welcome back. This is Ola coming to you live from my Empire Pro Studios. Welcome back. How are you guys doing? Welcome. Do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications. Today we're talking about Elon Musk. Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The most powerful man in the world and the richest man in the history of mankind. All right, so that's what we're talking about today. I just want to bring us up to speed with what's going on. Elon has decided to leave the government. Elon is the founder of, well, not the founder, is the CEO of Tesla. I think also of SpaceX. Recent times, he was the leader of the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, here in the United States. So we're talking about that today. We're just going to catch up to speed really quick and then call it a day. Shout out to you. Today's Thursday, May 29th. Today's an absolutely beautiful day. Oh my God. Today alone, I've learned so much lessons. It's wild. And I have a word for you on that. Chinye, welcome. Chinye. Babes, when they say trailer has come between them, it's so quick. You guys are so quick. Chia said he had no business in politics in the first place. Wow. Listen, welcome back, guys. I told you today was up to the last hour has been quite up to the last few days. Up to the last hour has been quite rough for me personally. I'm not gonna bore you guys with the details, but let me just tell you guys, okay? Keep your friends very close. When I come here and I talk about relationships, people think I'm only talking about romantic relationship, okay? When I talk about your relationship or relational skills, people always think it's about kwekus and prick only. But this is across the board. Keep your relationships very, very close. Two things. Hard work. When I say hard work, I'm not talking about just physical labor. I'm talking about mentally, okay? There's a lot of hard work you need to do mentally. You need mental resilience in life. And then the second thing is really relationships, because there's no amount of work that's going to replace the leverage that your relationships can bring, that good relationships can bring. There's no amount of work that will ever be able to beat leverage. Okay? So that's going to be a major point today that I want to leave you guys with, because honestly, arrogance is the order of the day. A lot of people really just operate from this place of pride. Actually, all of us. Pride can show up in very, very weird ways, you know. Pride is not always, doesn't always look like your shoulders are like this. You know, that's the one that we're all familiar with. When somebody's shoulders, they say, what did you do your shoulder? Not to do my shoulder. I just, that type of pride is what most of us are familiar with. The obvious ones. But there's a certain level of pride that comes from a blind spot for you. Right? It's not always going to come from a place of the obvious. You know, that person that you think is prideful, right? That angle that you tend to look at it from, there's another side of pride. That's the one that will probably come for you. Thank you, Chinye. You know, and we all have to be careful when it comes to pride and unrealistic expectations, right? So even when I come here and I talk about it, as you can see, I'm broadening the topics here a little bit, because honestly, if you don't understand these things at the very, if it's not deeply, if the understanding, the wisdom of it, if it's not deeply rooted, if it's just surface level things like issue between you and your partner, then you're probably going to miss it. This is actually very true across the board, okay? So the whole point of friendship, when I say the point focus, is really to have a strong sense of relationship that is not based on expectations. Disappointments are only possible when you have expectations. I cannot be unrealistic and ask you not to have expectations. You do have expectations at the very minimum, at the subconscious level. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so even if you are an holier than thou type of person, we all have expectations. We all have expectations of our relationships, our friendships, at least on the subconscious level, or eventually it shows up. Maybe you're giving, and the other person is not reciprocating. So at some point, you might complain. You might feel some type of way, Shout out to my brother David Olaya Yeni. What's going on, brother? Good to see you, man. Long time. I hope you're doing well. So relationships are everything, there's a mental resilience that you need as a person. You don't really know how strong you are until you find yourself in certain situations. You don't know. Okay. In that same token, you also don't know how weak you are until you find yourself in certain situations, right? You don't know how weak your guards are. You don't know how weak your protection case is until you find yourself in crisis, and the only thing we can just wish is that you have enough to sustain you through some very, very hard times. But hard times can, if you have enough mental resilience, can only do one thing. The key word is enough. Can only do one thing: make you stronger. So whatever you're going through, just know that somebody cares. Okay, somebody cares. All right, so two things: mental resilience, mental hard work. Hard work meaning you understand that whatever is going on right now is not the end of the world. Trust me, it is not. Okay, heaven is not about, it might feel that way, but heaven is not about to fall out of the skies. No matter what is going on with you as an individual, heaven is not going to fall out of the skies. And if you mess around, something happens to you, I guarantee you, help me hit the like button, by the way. Hit the like button. Let's ping other people into the room. If you mess around and something bad happens to you, heaven is still not going to fall out of the skies. Life will literally continue behind your back, no matter what you've been told. Okay? No matter what you've been told. So don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget what I just told you. Hard work, yes. Hard work, do whatever you can. In this world of AI right now, when we say hard work, we're literally saying mental for the most part. Okay, mental, hard work, knowledge base, equip yourself, build yourself. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Whatever you do, don't ever give up. It will sometimes feel like the wall's about to close in on you. It will sometimes feel that way. If you live life long enough, you've experienced this before. But don't give up. Don't give up. All right. So that's number one. Number two, your relationships. Give. You go into a relationship to give. Don't overanalyze, overcalculate the power of leverage, especially when it comes to relationships. Listen to me carefully. Okay? Listen to me carefully. Don't underestimate. I don't think I used that word right. Don't underestimate the power of leverage, especially. I'm trying to elaborate right now, okay? I'm typing this into ChatGPT as we speak. Especially when it comes to relationships, all types. Okay? Elaborate. Let's see what ChatGPT says. Don't ever underestimate the power of leverage, particularly when it comes to relationships. Financial is just one small aspect of it. Okay, that's just one small aspect of it. All right, but I'm talking about relationship across the board right now. The job market, I don't know if you've been in the job market lately. It's rough. It's rough. People are getting laid off. People that used to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-figure jobs, they're struggling to have one. Yes, I don't know if you're paying attention. That's what's going on, actually. They're struggling to have one. So no matter what it looks like, again, don't give up. Leverage your relationships. Okay. Sometimes you try to use automation. You try to depend on your own accolades, your own credentials, all the degrees. You have more degrees than a thermometer. You have all the certifications in the world, right? And yeah, it doesn't really mean anything. What it comes down to is relationships. If you were to narrow down to one last thing that you have left, is relationships. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that real quick. So today, we are seeing reports that Elon Musk is leaving the Trump administration after leading effort to slash federal government expenses, right? Well, it's mostly expenses, but basically to cut costs, So I'm looking at this report on Associated Press. We're going to go into some of the comments later on here. I think it'll be interesting to see some of the comments on YouTube, everywhere on the internet. I think it'll be interesting to look at that. I actually want to learn today because most of you will probably fall on one side, right? You either don't see any good in an Elon Musk, or vice versa, right? But I have to tell you that the lessons here are probably deeper than that, as always. Especially for prestige family, the lessons are always deeper than just taking one side. All right. But first of all, let me bring you up to speed. I want to talk about the big beautiful bill. What is that exactly? Okay. What is the big beautiful bill? I'll see if I can pull up some information. But what we know is that for every child, you're supposed to get $1,000, right? No taxes on tips, no taxes on, what's the other one? On overtime. If you're working overtime, no taxes on that. For an average person, all of you can probably appreciate at least no taxes on overtime if you work hourly. And if you work, hey, not too good to see you. If you work hourly, no taxes on overtime. If you make money in tips, no taxes on overtime. At first, some people said it's only if the tips are cash, but they say everything. Okay. If you make money. So that's the kind of bill that Donald Trump is trying to pass. I'm sure there's more in that bill, but there's no free money anywhere. Okay. Even when I just talked about leverage, right? It's just you understanding leverage. So for every unit of leverage you understand, somebody is out there operating from their place of coconut head. They don't understand that relationships are everything. Okay. And when I say relationships, don't forget that it starts with relationship with yourself. Because some people are out here, they just milk you, they will take advantage of you, they will consume your energy. They are like vampires. So I'm not talking about those kind of people that are in your world and their presence demonstrates toxic. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about healthy relationships. But don't forget that healthy relationships is a function of who you are too. If you find yourself always attracting toxic relationships, it's probably you. The key word is probably. I'm not saying it's always you. There's just some vampires that you can't, they are everywhere, right? But for the most part, you're probably attracting it. So just pay attention to that. So if you're not attracting it, you can leave. Okay, you can also just try to leave first, right? No, I can't leave. It's difficult to try to leave first. Okay. Anyway, Chia said, what happens to nonsensical Doge? We don't know. We're about to find out. All right. So according to the report says Elon Musk is leaving his governmental role as a top advisor to President Donald Trump, spearheading efforts to reduce and overhaul the federal bureaucracy. His departure announced Wednesday evening. Yeah, I think it was announced yesterday evening, but it's gone viral this morning. Today is Thursday, May 29th. Marks the end of a turbulent chapter that included thousands of layoffs. Yes, Yes, thousands upon thousands of layoffs. Those of you that live in Washington, D.C., you know what I'm talking about. Most of you that live in Washington, D.C., you either work for the government or you work for a government contractor. So it might seem like your job was safe until you find out that, oh, your boss is having a meeting with you suddenly, and then before you know it, it's over. Right? Some people, your job was not over, but a friend's job was over. I was talking to a friend of mine whose wife almost lost the job, and before you knew it, she didn't lose her job, but all the people she worked with, they lost their job. So she came home crying. He's probably listening, so he knows I'm talking about him. Came home crying, and then why was she crying? He thought that the wife lost the job, but the wife is crying because all the friends, all the colleagues lost their jobs. So it's nonetheless sad, right? Some people were offered severance, like they were offered, I think, 8 months pay, and they were given the option to opt out before they actually got laid off, and they were given like a window of time. And some of them did not take that window of time, and they got laid off. Some people were, you might consider it maybe smart enough, they took the severance, they took the offer, but it's not, your fate is in the hands of this guy, you know. So it's not a, there's no way to determine. It was basically a gamble. Yeah, it was a gamble. So when people say layoff of thousands of government jobs, always think about the fact that the government, there's thousands, literally thousands of government contractors out there who found themselves in a chokehold. You know, overnight, a business goes broke. It happens all the time. Trust me, I know. Right? It happens all the time. And sometimes it's mishandling of funds, sometimes it's not. It's usually a mix of the two, right? You made the wrong bet, you find yourself in a hole. Sometimes this hole, you might be digging yourself out of it for a long time. Sometimes the hole you're digging yourself out of is reputation, brand. You ever seen those reports on the internet? Chiye said, Ola, it was no effing joke. Thank God I wasn't affected. Yes, you live in the DMV. I forgot about that, Chiye. Yes, exactly, right? So sometimes, you know, you find yourself in this hole, and the hole you have to dig yourself out of is reputation. You know, you ever seen those reports where they say the best businesses to work for? That affects people's businesses too. So it's a very, very deep something when people are saying Elon Musk comes into an office and he starts to make some crazy decisions. He's literally the richest man in the history of mankind. I don't know if he's still the richest now. Who is the richest man? Let me see. Who is the richest man? I think it was. Still is. Oh, it is. Yeah. As of 2025, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. The CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Estimated net worth $342 billion, according to Forbes. Next to him is a whole $100 billion difference. Next to him is Jeff Bezos, 215. And this guy is supposed to determine you and I's financial faith. You see, according to Donald Trump, right? He's the richest man, so he would know. Actually, that's not true. That's not true, right? That's a lame way of thinking, because there's context. As long as he's still a human being, there's certain things or certain contexts he will simply not be able to relate with. He can't understand. Okay, he can't relate with you. So, and then coming from the business world, which was also the same reputation that they gave to Donald Trump to come and quote unquote become the best president, it's a different context entirely. In one case, you have to make sure everybody is good. In the other case, you have to maximize profit. Those are two different contexts, and they require two different understanding. Okay, one entity can go bankrupt, the other entity can continue to print money and make everybody else go bankrupt. It's too different, right? There's an indefinite safety net for the United States of America. When it comes to individuals or private companies or even publicly traded companies, they don't have such luxury. So you cannot, it's two different worlds, right? So the idea of creating Doge so that they can clean house and then just cut costs He needed a balance that they didn't have. So anyway, it's not an exact divorce. He didn't exactly dump Donald Trump. It's basically his time was up. But I'm sure if they wanted to extend, they would have extended. But let me finish this report from Associated Press. Anyway, his departure announced Wednesday evening marks the end of a turbulent chapter that included thousands of layoffs, the evisceration, that's a new word, the evisceration of government agencies and realms of litigation. All right, by the way, there's speculations that he came in just for his own selfish needs. He had a bunch of lawsuits that has now disappeared into thin air. So always think there's always some kind of personal level. But his business is not personal. It is always personal. Trust me. Okay. Despite the upheaval, the billionaire entrepreneur struggled in the unfamiliar environment of Washington, and he accomplished far less than he hoped. He dramatically reduced his target for cutting spending from $2 trillion to $1 trillion to $150 billion. Now, the goal was to cut cost, right? Government spending by $2 trillion. And then he reduced it. First of all, could he have done that if this was SpaceX or Tesla or his personal finances? He couldn't have done that. He was only able to change goals or change the goalposts because it was government, right? He was only able to do that in that realm. But yet he's going to come and try to use this reputation that he's a rich guy. Well, I'm sure this 130 days or so that he spent in that office is going to become another knowledge base for the United States government and lawmakers. They're probably going to block people like him for the rest of the life of this country. Okay, people like him will probably never be able to make it to that position again. But so there's always lesson learned, as in literally, also technically, also when it comes to legislature. Anyway, and so he dramatically reduced the goal for cutting spending from $2 trillion all the way down to $150 billion. Let me give you an idea of what we're talking about right now. Imagine somebody reducing the goal from $100,000 to like $100. I think so. Yeah, is my math correct? He took out about 9 zeros. No, not 9 zeros. It took about from 9 zeros reduced down to 6. So it took 3 zeros out. Yes. 3 zeros out. That would be okay, not 3 zeros. Don't worry. The point is that it's a drastic reduction. Okay, my math is off this morning. Okay. All right. And increasingly expressed frustration about resistance to his goals. Of course, because this is not your business. Even his business at Tesla and SpaceX, they've been dragging him by his blockers for the past few months now, because he's associated himself with the Republicans and particularly Donald Trump, right? And that has drastically reduced their net worth, the worth of the company, the value of the companies, right? So he's not exactly in control. He's in control of a lot. Let's not get it twisted, but not as much as he thought he was, right? Sometimes he clashed with other top members of Trump administration who chafed at the newcomers' efforts to reshape their departments and face fierce political blowback for his efforts. Why? Because these are people's livelihood. These are some of those politicians' livelihood. Right? So you can't just come in there and just say, hey, we're slashing this, we're slashing this. Of course, you will get pushed back at some point. She said as soon as he got here, he was assigned 2 huge business contracts because it's personal. Once he's secure, because think about it, like there's vested interest in assigning those contracts to him too. Even if it was trying to be holier than thou, like I'm not going to do that. Well, there's also people say, let me take care of him. Maybe he will keep my job. There's conflict of interest everywhere. Once he secured his bag and he and the administration clashed, he dipped with his bag. Yeah, it's still worth $342 million. I didn't even know it was that much. Last time I checked, it was like $200 billion. right? Hey, Marriott, good to see you, Marriott. He was cutting cuts at the wrong agencies. He just fired people and stole the personal information of Americans, and they let him. See, I was gonna go there. There are three things I was prepared to talk about today, right? Let me see. I was gonna go there. I was gonna talk about data. Data. You know, data literacy is something I might get into a little bit later on here. If not here, maybe on my secondary channel, my Empire Pro, right? Data literacy is something that the average person don't have yet. They have, you know, even though you have politicians fighting for data privacy and stuff like that, but it's still like a strange idea to a lot of people, right? That's something that a lot of the weirdos that were vouching for Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they didn't understand that, right? You're absolutely correct, right? He's had access, unnatural access to so much wealth, like for the rest of his life. So much, like I'm trying to describe it, I can't find the word to describe how much access that this guy has gained. Something that would have been impossible 4 years ago if it wasn't Donald Trump and all these executive orders, which are basically telltale sign of his inabilities to negotiate. Because when you get into such space where they're not just going to let you slide, right? You're just pulling all these executive orders. You're basically telling us, and that's why they have a 4-year term, right? You're telling us that you don't know how to go and negotiate with all these people that are behemoths just like you, right? That's what you're just taking shortcuts, right? So we'll get into that later on if we have time. Yes, data access. Second thing I was going to talk about is negotiation skills. And of course, I already talked about the other one, which is the big, beautiful bill, right? Yes, they're giving each one of your children $1,000, but how are you going to pay for it? How are your children going to pay for this with their future? Right? There's times I shared a video last time, How the Economy Works by Ray Dalio, right? It talks about the circles of the economy, right? The short-term circles and the long-term circles, and how they cross each other, and how some measures, some things you can use to save the economy if it ever gets into a bad dip, and the appropriate time to use those things. That's what those executive orders are for when it comes to government. But somebody just pulling and they decide to sign 150 executive orders in one day. Who had the time to read those things properly and to make sure that it's not going to affect the future of your children? Right? It's not, especially if they are claiming they want to cut government costs, right? It doesn't make any sense. Okay? It doesn't make any sense. So somebody's going to have to pay for it. But again, maybe the lessons are much more important than and probably much more valuable, hopefully, after the 4 years, right? So Chinye says some of his key employees left and said they'd not be a part of what he's trying to do. I remember that. A bunch of kids. First of all, he had a bunch of children. Literally, children. What do you mean children? I'm talking about 22, 23-year-old people trying to decide the fate of 300 million Americans. Just on the surface, I don't even know this thing that deep. Just on the surface, I could just tell that this is going to be a disaster, you know. But again, when you have a disaster, you learn, right? And the only source of that disaster was because there was some loopholes in the first place. Now those loopholes will be blocked. Bambiala retirement for Americans looting. Listen, there was a 19-year-old. Can you imagine that? Some of his executive orders were blocked. He thought it would be that easy. Yeah. And somebody came, I forgot what conversation I was having. What was the conversation? Oh, it was a friend. It was a personal friend. And he was talking about, we were actually talking about, can't remember now. We were talking about the Natasha and the Akpabio case. Natasha Akpoti and the Akpabio case. And he was making a case that, because I was saying, like, they need fair hearing. That's all I care about. I don't trust Natasha herself, personally. She's a politician in Nigeria, so I don't have any level of trust, or I don't care. But fair hearing is something so basic that anybody should encourage in anything that's trying to dig themselves out of Banana Republic, right? And this guy was like, well, and I said, what about the court? The court ordered that they couldn't continue with the suspension. And this guy was like, well, the legislation arms, right? The executive and the legislature, lawmakers and the judicial, they are supposed to be, what's the word? Marriott, help me. They're supposed to not interject. Like, you're taking that out of context. Yes, they can block each other if somebody is, that's the whole point. They're supposed to be check and balance for each other. If somebody is trying to do something illegal, the other one will stop it, right? But he was making a case, I forgot the word he used, but he sounded so smart. There's some people that just come up, they will sound so smart, but if you're patient enough, you just like, okay, this is just some dumb argument. That's the whole point of having the three arms of power. That's the whole point. You know, hold tight, guys. Hold tight. I'll be right back. Hold tight. Sorry about that, guys. It was an important call that I had to get. Let me get my face back on the thingy. Let's see. All right, switch cameras. There you go. All right, perfect. All right. So, now how do I know that some things doesn't make sense? How would I know that some things would just simply not make sense, right? Okay, they're supposed to be independent. The arms of the power are supposed to be independent. But what about the factor that they're supposed to be checks and balances for each other? If they're so independent, isn't that like a lawless country? I know that's how Nigeria operates. But if you're trying to dig yourself, we need to understand that's not, they're supposed to, the judicial can absolutely block. Not block indefinitely. They'll bring you back to the table for negotiation so we can make sure that the public is actually protected. Right? It will take several years to fix the mess he made. Will make in his administration. Yeah, I know, but you know, prosperity can happen overnight. So we can always count on that as individuals, and I'll continue to bring tips and stuff like that as I discover them myself, so that all of us here, Prestige Family, can be prosperous regardless. But sadly, there's always going to be the downside of that. That's what we call a society. Mario says, I was not a believer in the Project 25 conspiracy. I thought it was fear-mongering, but I see they have been executing so far. But yeah, it was real. I think like from second day, everybody was quite obvious that they were executing them. I got into it a little bit, but I'm like, me too. I was like, nah, it's not going to be possible. But I knew it was going to last, even if they try to execute, because the system, that's why I believe so much in system. The system is so strong that it was able to, because if it was up to what they think, I think they would have extended his whatever the 130 days limit was. They could easily extend it. Nobody was counting. I wasn't counting it anyway, you know. But I think the system was so strong. It's not only cracking down on him, it's cracking down on Tesla, on SpaceX, and we only, like, Donald Trump can only last 4 years. He's already used 130 days of it. So there you have it. Anyway, Musk's role working for Trump was always intended to be temporary. All right. And he had recently signaled that he would be shifting his attention back to running his businesses, such as the electric automaker Tesla and the rocket company SpaceX. But administration officials were often vague about when Musk would step back from his position spearheading the Department of Government Efficiency known as Doge. I always thought, like, what's the correlation between the Dogecoin and Doge? And he abruptly revealed that he was, because the Dogecoin came up and then collapsed too, like overnight. Remember that kid that was like worth $2 million overnight, something like that, and then it was worth almost zero the second day. He didn't take out this money. What happened to him? They had a name for him, Doge something, like a Doge Master or something like that. Anyway, I have not followed the cryptocurrency in a while, so I am following blockchain, but not cryptocurrency. And I quote, as my scheduled time, this is what he posted on Twitter, as my scheduled time as a special government employee comes to an end, I would like to thank President Real Donald Trump, at Real Donald Trump, for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. He wrote, the Doge mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life through the government. A White House official who requested anonymity to talk about the change confirmed Musk's departure. You see, at one, I think they said he was receiving how much in salary, like nothing, right? He doesn't need the money. Here's a lesson for all of us, okay? Money is probably the least form of value that you can. Money is very important, don't get me wrong. Money is super important, or money liquidity is super important. I know that. Okay, I know that if you get too low liquid wise, you can easily get into serious trouble, even if you have value in other ways, right? You can get into serious trouble that you can actually can't redeem yourself from. But in the grand scheme of things, is the least. So if somebody come and say, I'm not receiving salary, always ask them, what is in it for you? What is the form of value you are receiving? On this platform, I always pull this theory, which I always struggle to know the source, to remember the source of the theory of the 6 basic needs, right? These are all forms of values that people can get by doing something for you. They can claim to be doing something for you, but they're getting something in reverse. Now, you must, whatever value somebody is bringing to you, it is key to not make this a point to not be appreciative, right? Because some people use this as an excuse to not be appreciative. Say like, what is in it for you? I do for you, you do for me. I was listening to a conversation on TikTok the other day, and they were talking about what do women bring to the table, and then they were talking about, well, the women bring childbirth, and this guy was basically at the top of his lungs. He was yelling at the top of his lungs, talking about women bring nothing to the table, even when it comes to the childbirth. If you think what you brought to the table is childbirth, I put it to you, you bring nothing to the table, because that's something you're supposed to do naturally. Wow. Now, that's a character issue. That's something much, much deeper than just that talking point, okay? But let me tell you like this. This 6 basic needs is not an excuse to be an ingrate. Yes, you need to know it from an understanding standpoint, but there's another level of wisdom you need to apply beyond it. If somebody is able to bring this value into your life, then you deserve to appreciate them. So if what they bring is security, safety, or certainty, you need to appreciate it. Let me make the point I was making before I digress too much. The point is that if Elon Musk is making $0, let me even find out. Let me see if I can put it up, right? Elon Musk salary for Doge. There you go. People were searching already. It came up as an auto suggestion. It's an unpaid role. Right? So here's what is known. It's an unpaid role. Elon Musk has been working as a special government employee, which is an unpaid role, and he does not receive federal compensation for his advisory work with Doge. All right. Thank you, Elon. That's the point I'm making, right? Thank you. Right? But can we actually make sure that the other type of value you're bringing is actually valuable, both short and long term? And what it's looking like is like, as soon as he came into office, he was supposed to cut spending by $2 trillion. It drastically dropped to 150, was it billion? I forgot. What is it I read earlier on? Let me see, put it up. Okay. I think it only reduced by 10. Well, to 100 billion. Okay, so by 10, it's only by 10. 10, that's still a lot, right? It dropped to $150 billion. That's still a lot, right? That's by about $850 billion slashed off of that. Well, 850 billion, no, 1.8 trillion dollars was literally cut off. Yeah, something like that. My math is coming back. It's coming back. Sponsor, correct me if I'm wrong. I beg. But that's a lot of money. So already, right? You're supposed to supposed to under-promise and over-deliver. He was doing the opposite, right? Over-promised and under-deliver. Yeah, right? They're supposed to under-promise and over-deliver, but they basically did the opposite. Him and his superior, Donald Trump. So far, well, it's only been 130 days, but he's quitting the job already. And not only that, a bunch of people, a bunch of 19 years old and 23 years old, they quit their jobs now. That left us with what? A bunch of people with no jobs, right? Now, I know that the judiciary has also enforced them to hire some people back, but I think it's only a fraction of that, because the reality is that the executive does have a certain level of power. But anyway, I was saying, with regards to, these are all the form of value that people can be getting from you. So they might say, oh, I'm not getting salary. I need to be clear. Yes, you're not getting salary. You're bringing me some kind of value in exchange for what? So in contracts, we have terms, right? We have consideration. We have terms of the contract. And then we have what the contract is about itself, right? So it's not just cash, but it's very easy to sway, right? To cajole the general public. All you have to do is speak their language and they will just all slip to that direction. Mario says judiciary is the only part functioning as designed right now, even if their ideologies, or is it dialogues? You mean dialogues? Exactly. That is why some of his executive orders were blocked. Yep. It's checks and balances, right? He still got his fat ass contracts. Yes, he did, right? Because real people that didn't want their job tampered with, politicians and government employees, they did the needful. So, yes, no salary, unpaid, whatever they want to call it. But what else? It's an advisory position. The White House has clarified, and Musk is a senior advisor. Limited term is designation as a special government is 130 days. Okay. But it's only, they said, it's actually specifically a maximum of 130 days per year. So it might come back next year. We don't even know yet, right? Now, what are the benefits to his companies is the question, right? May God bless Google and ChatGPT and Gemini. Those are my favorites. Limited term. But what are the benefits to his company? Despite not receiving a direct salary, Musk companies such as SpaceX and Tesla have received substantial government contract and subsidies. Even Chinyegon knows better than these things. Chinye already told me in the chat, right? Dogecoin ownership. Oh, while the exact amount is unclear, Musk has confirmed that he owns Dogecoin and has publicly endorsed the cryptocurrency. I did not know that. I did not know that. How come I didn't know that? That's crazy. That's something I would normally have known. No salary for promoting Dogecoin. There is no indication that Musk receives a salary from Dogecoin. He doesn't need to receive it. Do you think the $342 billion that is what? Do you think that's cash? No, it's not cash. It's not salary. It's net worth. Okay, and his purchasing power in general can be much more than that, because all it takes is for this to be published in a few reputable publications, and the bank will give you times 10 that money if need be. That's how value works. Value is not just the cash in your pocket. That's something that most people don't understand. That's why they're able to buy them with $1,000 check for every child. Right? That's why they only that's why this is only applicable for people that make less than $150,000 a year. They know people that make more than that, you probably can buy them with that kind of, like, $1,000 for what? Some of them make more than that and they still dumb though. May God help our wisdom. Oh God. Anyway, let me finish this report here. This report is is actually very solid. Let me see here. So Musk announced his decision one day after CBS released part of an interview in which he criticized the centerpiece of Donald Trump's legislative agenda by saying he was disappointed by what the president calls his big, beautiful bill. All right, I'm going to play that video real quick and then we'll take it from there. Let's take a look.
You know, I was like disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, like, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
There you have it. There you have it. So the big beautiful bill, what exactly is that? I already said earlier on, I think they said you get like $1,000 per child, no taxes on tips and overtime. Which again, in the grand scheme of things, somebody has to pay for that. If you know anything about how value transfers from hand to hand, from generation to generation, you won't just outrightly be advocating for this kind of stuff unless you fully understand them. Okay, just know that politicians across the board are liars, and the biggest liars of them is probably Donald Trump himself. Okay, because he's not your typical liar. He's the truth teller of all politicians, which means he's probably the biggest liar of them all. Because he's only looking to, Donald Trump probably only cares about his name. I don't think he cares about money like that, because when I say money, I'm talking about cash. He could care less. He's going to be always fine. Because again, it's all about that name. And he knows that 4 years is nothing, you know. And he knows that most politicians are liars, and he knows how to call their bluff. So he's gotten away with a lot in the last since 2016, almost 10 years now. He's gotten a lot with a lot, you know. Yeah, so I don't recall him pumping Doge, but he must have. I think he did a tweet or two, and his tweets are worth more than the average politician's salary. Elon Musk tweets are worth more than the average politician's salary. So of course it doesn't want. How much salary are you going to pay him? That's worth any one of those big government contracts, right? This conflict is fake as a reason to justify leaving. Lorira, listen, who knows? The whole thing. People love handouts. They will find out. They're gonna learn the hard way. He saw the red flag and they picked race. Maybe he'll come back next year when the coast is clear a little bit. By the way, if you haven't hit the like button, please help me hit the like button. All right, help me hit the like button. I appreciate all 7 of you watching this live. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let me see here. I'm trying to get back to that special report. All right, so in terms of the beautiful, what is the beautiful bill? Trump's the big beautiful bill. It spans over 1,000 pages. So of course, I'm just gonna read the highlights from Associated Press here. Shout out to the Associated Press for doing the Lord's work. House Republicans are getting closer to passing President Donald Trump's tax breaks. It is a tax break, spending cuts, and beefed up border security as Speaker Mike Johnson attempts to pass the package over unified Democratic opposition by Memorial Day. That's just a few days ago, right? House committees have labored for months on the legislation, which exceeds 1,000 pages and is titled One Big Beautiful Bill Act. OBBBA. A nod to Trump himself. A beautiful bill, right? GOP divisions have narrowed but continue as fiscal conservatives worry the bill doesn't do enough to curb Medicaid spending, while Republicans from competitive swing districts have expressed concerns about the prospect of their constituents losing access to health coverage and food assistance for constituents. Democrats say they will fight what House Party leader Hakeem Jeffrey calls this extreme and toxic bill. Here's a look at what's in and out of the legislative package so far. Tax cuts for individuals and businesses. Republicans look to make permanent the individual income and estate tax cuts passed in Trump's first term in 2017, plus enact promises he made on the 2024 campaign trail to not tax tips over time and interest on some auto loans. I think basically automobiles that are basically made by America, by United States of America. To partially offset the lost revenue, Republicans propose repealing or phasing out more quickly the clean energy tax credits passed during Joe Biden's presidency, helping to bring down the overall cost of the tax portion to about $3.8 trillion. The bill includes a temporary boost in the standard deduction, a $1,000 increase for individuals, bringing it to $16,000 for individual filers, and a $2,000 boost for joint filers. So if you're married, you get $2,000. If you're not, $1,000. Bringing it to $32,000 for joint filers. If you're joint, married and filing joints, doing joint, RNG joints, whatever, if you're filing taxes jointly anyway. The deduction reduces the amount of income that is actually subject to income tax. There's also a temporary $500 increase in the child tax credit, bringing it to $2,500 for 2025 through 2028. Basically, it's term. It then returns to $2,000 and will increase to account for inflation. So it's actually a $500 increase for child tax credit. The estate tax exemption rises to $15 million and is adjusted for inflation going forward. One of the thorniest issues in negotiation has been how much to raise the state and local tax deduction, now capped at $10,000. That's been a priority of New York lawmakers. A tentative agreement has been reached to increase that SALT cap to $40,000 for incomes up to $500,000, with the cap facing downward for those with higher incomes. Several of the provisions Trump promised in the campaign will be temporary, lasting roughly through his term in office. The tax breaks for tips, overtime, and car loan interest expire at the end of 2028. That's also the case for a $4,000 increase in the standard deduction for seniors. Among the various business tax provisions, small businesses, including partnerships and S corporations, will be able to subtract 23% of their qualified business income from their taxes. The deduction has been 20%. Businesses will temporarily be allowed to fully expense domestic research and development costs in the year they occur, and the cost of machinery, equipment, and other. All right. So that's a little bit of synopsis from the big beautiful tax cut, big beautiful bill. So Musk announced his decision one day after the interview, like I said. So now the legislation includes a mix of tax cuts and enhanced immigration enforcement. Now this is what Trump says. Trump said, "I'm not happy about certain aspects of it, but I'm thrilled by other aspects of it." He said Trump also suggested that more changes could be made. Anyway, what are we talking about here? Bottom line is that whatever they did in this last 130 days, it's looking like a setback for me. We don't know what this is going to cost over time. We will see. It just looks like clownery. This is again another form of pride that I always talk about here. We need everybody in this life needs checks and balances. You need people around you. You need people that will help you do checks and balances. Living, I know hands-on experience, it's a bad idea to live in a one-man island and be making decisions on your own. Be it about your personal life or even about business. There's always a blind spot. Everybody has a blind spot. Now, obviously, we can make a case, or they can make a case, that that's why Donald Trump brought on Elon Musk. But it looks like it's two sides of the same coin, right? It just didn't look good, and so far it still doesn't look good, we need checks and balances. I'm still personally understanding this stuff, but there's no one size or one size fits all in any of this stuff. That's why we have a government that's supposed to have checks and balances. That's why the idea of a one-party state is a terrible idea, right? That's why that's a backwards idea. So for those of you that are more involved with Nigerian politics, that's why that's always going to be a bad idea, right? Let me read some comments before I round up for today. All right, then I'll be back tomorrow, I promise. Promise. Today I was tempted not to come here, but God has been good. Let's see. All right, so I have wanted so much Trump. I have watched so much Trump content in a long time. I haven't watched so much Trump content in a long time. It usually annoys me. You can trust me now. You know me. I have a reason. Well, number one reason because it's trending today. Let me not cap, right? But if I'm going to, I don't just pick on stuff just because it's trendy. I also like to see that we can learn one or two lessons from it. Okay, let me see some of these public comments before I round up. Let's see. Somebody said, all right. Somebody said Trump always chickens out. I'm looking at just online comments. Somebody said he's a traitor. They're talking about Elon Musk now. Let me see here. No. I'm looking at the wrong one. Wrong one. Hold on. Let me find the right one here. So they're actually calling Trump a traitor. Oh God. Wala. The loudest people on the internet are not. They're not Trump's. They're not. They're usually Trump supporters. Those are loud. Maybe it's my algorithms though. All right, so somebody said, I'm looking at some of the comments here. I'm actually looking at some of the comments on CNN. Somebody said Doge was never about saving money. It was about asserting control and pushing out people that might stand in Trump's way, legally or not. All right, somebody said Doge is a joke. Another person said no government contracts for Elon. Too late. Somebody said, has Elon figured out yet that Trump doesn't know what he's doing? Even yesterday, Putin and the whole Russia government, they said he doesn't fully understand. Remember what the report I made yesterday? It's not full. I say I concur. I hate to agree with the Russia and Putin, but I concur. Somebody said it was always a scam. Supposedly save US $160 billion, but increase the deficit by $4 trillion. I mean, the studies is they're gonna keep coming out. We're gonna see what the truth is as time goes on, But do me a favor, hit the like button. I have one question to ask before I end the session. Okay, was this good riddance to bad rubbish? What do you think? Okay, because me, I'm just still learning. Okay, I'm a learner when it comes to this stuff. Okay, was this good riddance to bad rubbish? This was always a scam. Let me know what your thoughts are when you watch this. Tomorrow I'll be back with more stories, but I'm going to end the session today. Go back to your productive days, and if you're looking for my books, you can download them for free in the comment section, or just simply go to manofprestige.com. You can download the books absolutely for free. Thank you so much for your support. Marriott, base wins. Chinye, I see you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hopefully you've been enlightened. Natu, thank you. Enlightened educator, I'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Girl, it's your love that I've been missing. I miss all your hugs, your touching and kissing. Make love on the floor, the couch in the kitchen. One love enough, we done enough.